On Monday, I asked the Prime Minister, or asked Minister Edgell, the Minister of Public Works, if he felt that the calls for him to resign were justified, because those calls were coming from members of the public on social media and in the streets, and then you also saw some calls from the opposition and some, I think, the Amerindian People's Association and so on. Now, the question was not answered by Minister Edgell. On Monday, the Prime Minister said that he was going to answer, and then he spoke of the President being elected and given a mandate, and once elected, he selects his team to work with, and that over the last 5 years, the team worked well, and that they've returned with a bigger mandate and so on. So today at the press conference, Tuesday, I returned with the same question. I structured it differently, and then, in fact, on Monday, the Prime Minister said, when I raised the question, he said that he heard the noise.
I know time is going. One of the things that struck me, and you probably I think you answered part of it as I watched it, because I tell you, I'm involved. I always listen to what's happening in Guyana, and I saw for the first time the Prime Minister in officiating in his position. Normally, I would see the President. But I made a comment about that on the show. I said, it's very interesting that it was the Prime Minister that I saw. I was surprised. I forgot even what he looks like.
The President was not in the country.
That's what I'm hearing, that the President was not in the country, and that it's being alleged that that people weren't sure exactly where he was because he left without saying where.
And telling the nation that he's leaving.
Telling the nation. And it reminds me, somebody wrote me, because my people are watching the podcast as well, and they said that it's our Prime Minister's twin, because it would have been the same thing. We would not know where she is. And it's a similar thing there. And they said they're brothers and sisters, but brother and sister. But it was very interesting, because I made the comment on my show. I said, but that's odd. I thought I would have seen the President. It was the Prime Minister. I thought that they were just putting him up there to take the fall. I didn't.
The president. But that's what they normally do. Put those black guys out there, let them answer those questions.
Yeah.
The President was in Canada. The President, I have confirmation that the President was in Canada. There are rumors that he was in Canada and was supposed to fly to New Jersey on a private jet to go to the World Cup. I don't know how true that is. That's what the rumors are. But he hasn't addressed it. These guys are not accountable to nobody. They're just going to power, and they become arrogant and think they don't have to tell the people who hired them what they're doing. I know when I worked for President Hoyt, every time he left the country, he did a broadcast or to put out a statement saying he's leaving the country, he's going to a conference, and what that conference is about. And then we see that the Prime Minister has been sworn in by the Chancellor as the acting president. And when he comes back, he resumes duties, and he gives another broadcast or press conference, and he reports to the nation on what was accomplished at this conference. These guys don't do that. They own the country. We belong to them. We belong to them. So they don't have to report. Well, don't know me, I don't live there. But the Guyanese people, they feel belong to them. So they don't have to report to anybody. They own the people. They own the people. They own the country. Right? The President is very arrogant. And he doesn't like anybody question him or ask him hard questions. They believe in Trumpism. He operates like he's Donald Trump.
Hello. So you guys would have seen the press conference earlier today, and my question to the Prime Minister. And for those of you who have not seen it, and for context, on Monday I asked the Prime Minister, or asked Minister Edgell, the Minister of Public Works, if he felt that the calls for him to resign were justified, because those calls were coming from members of the public on social media and in the streets, and then you also saw some calls from the opposition and some, I think, the Amerindian People's Association and so on. Now, the question was not answered by Minister Edgell. On Monday, the Prime Minister said that he was going to answer, and then he spoke of the President being elected and given a mandate, and once elected, he selects his team to work with, and that over the last 5 years, the team worked well, and that they've returned with a bigger mandate and so on. So today at the press conference, Tuesday, I returned with the same question. I structured it differently, and then, in fact, on Monday, the Prime Minister said, when I raised the question, he said that he heard the noise, and that the noise being the members of the public calling for the minister to resign. So today at the press conference, I said, Prime Minister, yesterday you used the word which the public was not receiving very well. And I asked the Prime Minister if he wanted to use the press conference to maybe use another word and stuff. And he said he has no apologies for what he said, and that they're noise. So I asked him if the concerns of the public is considered noise, and he said yes. And then he started to suggest that it's the opposition who is calling and so on. I'm the least concerned about what the opposition calls for. Our interest is in the members of the public, the average ordinary man and woman in the street and members of the public. So I asked Minister Edgell the question again. I said, Minister Edgell, do you believe that the calls for you to resign are justified? And he said that he will answer those questions at the appropriate time, or any question, something to that effect. But the Prime Minister did say that he stand by what he said yesterday, which is the concerns of the calls for Edgell to resign are noise. And I asked him if he considers the concerns of the public to be noise, and he said yes, he has no apologies to make. I think that the response by the Prime Minister is unfortunate. I think it was not the very best of words and choice of words to use, and I respectfully believe that those words will come back to bite the Prime Minister in his ass. I also believe that those words will affect the party, which is the People's Progressive Party, and I believe that it will also affect government at some stage, at some point, because that's not the way you speak to issues when a nation is in mourning. And so I really think that, so I see people jumping up and saying the Prime Minister fixed Big Smith business and Big Smith is asked stupid questions and so on. I ask a question that the public is asking. The public does not have access to these public officers, and we as members of the media who have access to them, we have to bring the public's concerns and so on to them. And that is what I did on Monday, and that's what I did on Tuesday, on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And so the Prime Minister's comments were unfortunate. I don't feel personally attacked by the comment, by his response, although he said that I have contributed to the noise. Before we went on to say he saw a lot of opposition elements and so on. And again, I don't care what the opposition call for us. So that's the politicians that got to deal with that. So I came here to say I am not personally offended or affected by the response given by the Prime Minister. The people who may be offended or should be offended are the members of the public who have a general and genuine concern, and they believe that too many lives were lost, and they believe too many stories were not adding up, and so they've been calling for the minister to resign. And I personally believe that their calls were fair calls, or I won't say fair, but I believe they had a fair reason to call for the minister to resign. And if they ask for him to resign, and then we're bringing it to that press conference to get a feel on if the minister feels that these calls are justified and so on. And the good thing to do should have been to answer the question in a more tamed manner, in a more respectful manner. And I believe the Prime Minister squandered that opportunity. So Leroy Smith is not personally affected. Leroy Smith is not, doesn't feel personal about the response. It is just that the response is unfortunate, was unfortunate, and the response obviously will come back to do some damage. And you can't blame the reporter for that. You have to blame the person who answered the question, which is the Prime Minister of this country. So have a fantastic evening.